Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Sacred 2 Remaster just came out on Steam and consoles, and it got some pretty bad reviews.
Who do you take me for?
It seems like a lot of people were experiencing bugs and crashes, which is something I also pointed out in my review. My biggest problem with the game is definitely the crashes and how frequent they can occur. However, we also got to hear from the developers, and they said they're working hard on fixing all of these issues in the upcoming patch. Feel free to check out my full review of the game if you didn't already. In this video, I'm going to give you some crucial tips for beginners, talk a little bit about all classes, and explain all major gameplay systems. It should help you a lot if you're just getting started.
What a great feeling!
Sacred 2 is not exactly your typical ARPG, it has some unconventional gameplay systems, which makes the gameplay unique in a way. That's one of the reasons why I love it so much, and why I keep replaying it every once in a while. Anyway, let's start with the first topic. When you're creating your character, you can choose between 7 different classes, but you also have some other options that might be a bit confusing at first. You have the option to choose a light or a dark campaign. For the most part, you won't be able to tell a huge difference no matter what choice you make here. This will affect some side quests, as well as quest dialogue, and how your character reacts in those situations.
Don't ever speak to me again!
Some parts of the main story will play out differently, and quest objectives will be slightly different as well. These are some great little role-playing options you have, which is not so common in ARPGs. Actually, I can't think of a single ARPG which gives you similar role-playing options, because it's usually just hacking and slashing your way through the campaign. Some of these characters can't even choose a campaign, you're stuck with only one option because of the lore reasons. For example, Seraphim class can only select light, and the Inquisitor class can only play the dark campaign. This option will also affect your choice of deities. All of these gods will grant you one very powerful ability that you can use every now and then. What's possibly the biggest tip I can give you here is to avoid selecting Kier, because you might even ruin your playthrough before it even begins. While this creature is extremely strong, he will quickly turn against you and you won't be able to deal any damage to him. I remember getting stuck the first time I tried playing the game because he would just kill me over and over again, preventing me from even moving from the starting area. Yeah, fun times. But if used correctly and situationally, it can be a very powerful ability. I would definitely avoid it, at least for my first playthrough. And to be honest, these spells are not that exciting or important, especially on higher levels. They can definitely help you out a lot, especially in the beginning, so it's best to avoid annoying gods like Kier. There is another option that you can select when making your characters, which might be very confusing to beginners. That's because the game doesn't explain it properly, like at all. And that will be the option called Expert Touch or Master Hands, depending on your region, I guess. I'll try to keep this as simple as possible, even though it's a little bit more complex. We have yet to talk about the spells in this game called Combat Arts and Combos, and this option is heavily related to that. This option will affect the cooldown of your spells, to put it simply. In most cases, you should only turn this option on if you know exactly what you're doing with your character's builds. And since you're a beginner who probably wants to experiment a little bit with your character's spells and other gameplay features, that means you should keep this option off. This option can only be turned on or off while making a character, by the way. But you should not worry too much about it.
I love this massacre!
Your choice of class will shape your entire playthrough of the game. I would say that Sacred 2 has a very cool class design in general. All of these classes are pretty unique, even though you will find resemblance to your typical RPG classes. You should definitely choose a class that looks the most interesting to you, but here's a couple of things you should know before doing that. Seraphim, Shadow Warrior, and Dryad to a lesser extent are classes that you might want to consider for your first playthrough. These classes are beginner friendly, mostly because of their stats and the gear they can use. Shadow Warrior and Seraphim have the highest starting health points as well as damage output, which is definitely going to make your life a lot easier. Temple Guardian is probably one of the most unique classes in the game, and it actually has the highest damage output in the beginning. However, I would actually recommend avoiding this class, at least on your first playthrough, because he can be a bit confusing. The same can be said about the Inquisitor class. High Elf is a mage character class with some great damage, but it will take a while until you get to that point, and she starts off very weak. Dragon Mage is very similar to High Elf because he focuses a lot on spells. They look very cool, especially when transforming to dragons, but it's definitely not a class I would recommend to beginners. Dryad is a ranged type of character that can use specific weapon types, and this could be a decent starting class if you're willing to do some kiting. But overall, I would heavily recommend sticking with the Seraphim or the Shadow Warrior for your first playthrough. I would also recommend playing on the silver difficulty if you have any experience with these types of games, which you probably do. The challenge will depend on a couple of things like your character class and how often you die in the game. Yeah, there is an interesting system in the game called Survival Bonus, which regulates the challenge as well as your chance to find rare loot. You will notice that all enemies in the game are going to be around your level, but if you keep playing the game for longer play sessions without dying, you'll start seeing enemies which are up to 10 levels higher than you. This will of course make those fights harder, especially boss fights, but it also increases your chance to find better loot. It's a pretty cool system. You can keep the track of this by checking out your logbook menu. Speaking of systems, let's talk about one of the major gameplay systems in the game called Combat Arts. Combat Arts are basically your character spells. All classes in the game have 3 skill trees called aspects with different spells and modifiers. The way you can learn these spells is by finding runes, which can be dropped by enemies, looted in chests, and they can also be obtained through a specific NPC. You won't have to play the game for long until you get a lot of runes for your character class, but you also get a lot of runes for other 6 classes in the game. This will be useful even if you don't plan to play with other classes, and here's why. I mentioned the NPC who can help you obtain runes. You can get the exact runes you want from him as long as you offer him 1 or more runes that you don't need, and you also need to pay for this service. The more runes you offer him, the less money you need to pay for his services. If you only offer him 1 rune, the cost of getting the rune you want will be insanely high, especially in the beginning of the game when you don't have a lot of gold. Like I said, before you even decide to do this, you maybe want to think of saving some of these runes for other classes if you plan to try them out. Speaking of which, you might have noticed this little imp when you created your character. You can summon this little guy whenever you want by pressing and holding down the arrow on the controller or by pressing X on the keyboard. You can also find the storage in all major locations, usually at the very center of the town. Unfortunately, there is no rune stacking in the remaster, which means you can't stack the same runes. This means that you can easily fill up your inventory slots with runes, which kinda sucks, so it's probably not smart keeping a ton of them in the storage, at least for now. Maybe they will add the rune stacking feature in some future updates. Another really important thing you should know about activating runes is that each time you do it, the cooldown of that particular combat art will go up. So it's not really smart to just recklessly use all the runes every time you get them, because you'll find yourself with very long cooldowns on all combat arts. However, there are a couple of ways to keep this under control. Pretty much all character classes have skills you can get which will reduce the cooldown on spells. Some of these skills are related to a certain aspect, which then reduces the cooldown on all spells within that one certain aspect. Just be sure to read them properly. Here's another very important thing to keep in mind before even attempting to increase the power of your combat arts by consuming runes. It's basically just a simple stat that you can check in the skills menu. All 3 aspects of each class will have these skills, which can show you the highest spell level without penalty. If you exceed the level of spells that's shown here but just keep activating runes, you'll get massive cooldown penalties. So always check this before you decide to increase the level of your spells, so you know exactly when to stop. Another useful stat to keep in mind related to this is the regeneration penalty from armor. This shows you how big is the cooldown penalty for all of your spells because of the armor you wear. Stronger armor will usually have bigger cooldown penalties, but some set armors like this one for example will even reduce the penalty. If you notice a huge cooldown on your spells, you might want to check out the armor you're using and maybe switch some pieces around to reduce the cooldown. Now let's talk about another major gameplay feature called combos.
You have no patience.
Combos allow you to use multiple spells at once, basically. For example, you can select a couple of damaging spells from any aspect and put them in a single combo and cast the combo with a single button. You get 4 combos that you can customize however you want, and they're completely empty at first. Once you're done selecting the spells for the combo, you just drag the combo icon and use it as a regular spell. When you use the combo in combat, your character will seamlessly execute all abilities within that combo. This simplifies the gameplay quite a bit, and it has its advantages and disadvantages. At first, you only get the option to combine 2 spells within a combo, but that's more than enough to make your life a lot easier in combat, especially if you want a more laid-back approach to gameplay. If you want to keep everything under control at any given moment, you maybe don't want to use combos. I actually recommend playing around with this system because it's pretty unique and fun. It can also produce some funny gameplay moments. For example, if your character killed the last enemy that's close to him, but the combo still has more abilities that are not used, your character will just make a long run to the nearest enemy and finish the combo. I mean, you gotta respect the dedication.
It's not a good day for dying.
Your character doesn't want to waste the cooldown, so this can be very useful, actually. But you can easily interrupt combos as well, for whatever reason. You can start moving around or casting some other spell, which will interrupt the combo. Just remember that doing this will put your combo on a cooldown, so it's usually not wise to do so. You should just let it play out. So yeah, just keep in mind that combos will transfer to other enemies if your current target is dead, as long as you don't interrupt it. Just let it play out until your character stops, unless you're going to die or something. I highly encourage you to play around with combos because they are a unique feature in the game. As for the skills, you can see which level you have to gain in order to unlock more skill slots. Then you need to choose the skill you want and it will be active in the slots. You can also level up every skill, which is pretty self-explanatory. What's not so straightforward are the skills which are grayed out in the beginning. In order to get to the second row of the skills, you'll need to invest at least 5 points into some skills from the first row. All classes have primary and secondary skills, so this will be a little bit different for all classes. It's not complex as it sounds, you just need to invest 5 points into a primary skill tree and the secondary skill will unlock automatically. If you want to know which skill you need to increase in particular, in order to get a specific secondary skill, I would recommend checking out Sacred Wiki. Speaking of skills, Sacred 2 allows you to use a lot of weapon types with pretty much all classes. Some weapon types are exclusive to specific classes, but here's the thing you should know. If you find a very good weapon that you can use, but you find yourself missing a lot of hits, that's because you probably don't have an appropriate skill level with that weapon type. For example, I have a very nice two-handed axe on my Shadow Warrior, but the attack speed is poor and I keep missing hits because I don't have an appropriate skill. This means that you'll be better off with a regular weapon for which you have the appropriate skill, instead of a high quality weapon with no skill. So yeah, literal skill issues. Even so, I highly encourage you to try out different weapon types and see what you like the most, then you can make a plan for the skills you want to get. I mean, it's all about having fun, and this game offers you a lot of different weapon types, so experiment a little bit. The world of Sacred 2 is absolutely massive, so the sooner you unlock a mount, the better. All classes can buy a horse in various populated places. This will be the nearest place from the starting zone where you can buy a horse for most of the classes. Even the cheapest horse will mean a lot in the beginning, and I would actually recommend not spending a lot of money on expensive horses. That's because you can get a special mount when you do a series of specific quests. I won't give you a full guide here, but I can tell you where to start. You'll need to do the main quest until you reach the location called Orcish Byway. Then you will see this special side quest, which is very hard to miss. All you need to do is follow this quest line and eventually you'll get to this island. Then you get another set of quests you need to do before you can buy the mounts. These mounts are very expensive, so you probably won't have enough gold if you just rush to this place. So I suggest playing the game normally until you get close to the level 20 and you accumulate enough gold. Having one of these special mounts is a game changer. They will allow you to cast all of your combat arts, combos and buffs without dismounting. Regular horses, on the other hand, can have some basic skills that you can use, but you won't be able to use your combat arts or even some buffs. What's really cool about this, even some special combat arts with the Shadow Warrior will affect the mounts. When I use the invisibility spell, for example, even the mount becomes invisible, which is pretty damn cool. Now I'm going to give you a few miscellaneous tips, which will help you out a little bit.
Give me all you've got. Come on again!
Sacred 2 has an AoE loot button. By default, this action is binded on the Q on the keyboard or LB on the controller. You'll notice a lot of chests and containers that you have to open by pressing A or the left mouse click. However, if you just press the AoE loot button a couple of times while being close to the container, you'll automatically loot all items. The world map is interactive and you can activate quests by clicking on circles. The silver quest marker is guiding you to your active side quest, but if you get confused, it's very easy to select which quest you want to track by just double clicking it on the world map. If this is your first time playing the game, I would recommend just exploring the map however you want, pretty much. You'll stumble upon a ton of quests either way, so it's all up to you if you want a more guided exploration or just explore the Fog of War in a random direction. Speaking of maps, you have a minimap as well. What's really easy to miss is that you can zoom in the minimap and walk around like this. The default button for this action is LB on the controller or tab on the keyboard, but you need to hold it on the controller. Last but not least, you should check out one option in the gameplay menu. I'm pretty sure the follow camera option is turned off by default in the remaster, but if by any chance it's not, just go ahead and turn it off. Trust me, it makes the gameplay way more enjoyable and less janky. And those will be all the beginner tips, which I personally consider to be essential.
That's all you have to offer?
Sacred 2 is not one of those games that will even attempt to explain these things to you, and that's one of the reasons why I felt the need to make this video. And I'm still playing the game every day, because it's so goddamn addictive. I just hope they will address all the problems that people have with the game in future patches. Speaking of which, I think they just dropped a couple of patches while I was finishing the recording of this video, so I'm really glad to see they're actively working on these issues. Anyway, let me know if I managed to help you a little bit with these tips, and if you're a veteran Sacred 2 player, feel free to leave more tips in the comments for beginners. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.